Yes, yeah, the recording is done. So here we go. So the probably you might have seen the topic of the choice for this particular week's Connect session. It's all about Spring Boot. Fundamental is what I mentioned, right? So that's where we are going to talk about today. If in case you are pretty new and you are not having much of a knowledge on Spring Boot, probably this will be a startup session for you people. People who are already having some experience, then probably this is going to be a kind of a revisit for understanding the fundamental thing. But I want you people to raise your questions. Only then this session will be more informative and interesting. Otherwise, it will be YouTube persons are there who are delivering more similar sessions. You can go and watch. But the ideal point here is I just wanted you people to have more, more learnings from your question which you're going to post. Okay. So please ensure that you are ready with questions so that we can discuss on that more in detail so that others also gain much out of that question. Spring Boot, probably it's just a kind of a framework. I don't want to go more theoretical, so there is no slides or stuff like that. Just take you through this demonstration stuff. I guess we are going to develop a small, quick applications using the Spring Boot framework. So, in order to learn Spring Boot, we need to have the knowledge on Spring Framework. So, Spring Framework is something which is very essential in order to understand Spring Boot. But ideally, people nowadays are directly jumping into the learning of Spring Boot. But what I suggest is it's good to have some knowledge on Spring Framework. What I mean by Spring Framework is you should know some knowledge, gain some knowledge from the fundamentals of Spring, where it all starts from the Spring core. If you get into the Spring Boot, most of the things are abstracted, and you will not gain much depth of knowledge by directly jumping into Spring Boot. But going forward, that's how it's going to be. So people are going to directly get into the Spring Boot way of learning. But I personally suggest that you also gain some knowledge on the Spring framework as in a fundamental. Only then you will have more confidence in working on top of the Spring Boot. Otherwise, it will be like a workflow. Like workflow means you just start from here, you do this, you click this, you go next, you write this code and you execute and you get the output. So that's a kind of a workflow which we usually do it, but you try to refrain from doing such kind of a workflow because you have to gain more knowledge on the framework by itself. So getting into this Spring Boot creation of a project, it's pretty simple. So right now I'm using the IDE of STS, Spring Tool Suite. Right now you can see that the screen that's visible for you right now is Spring Tool Suite, and STS we call it as it's an Eclipse base. You can use any IDE for this matter. You can use IntelliJ or you can use Microsoft Visual Studio Code, VS Code Editor. I use all IDEs, STS, Visual Studio Code, and as well as the IntelliJ. But mostly I used to work with this STS, which gives more comfort in working with Java-based applications. If I'm working on front end, let's say I'm into Angular, so I work on Angular code, and for that predominantly I use VS Code for the front end development using the Node.js and stuff like that. But when it comes to the backend services, I used to work only on the IDE of STS, or I go up to the IntelliJ. So these are the different IDEs that we have. Right now, it's all about the STS. You can straight away go to the STS, Spring Tool Suite, and you can download it. I guess we have something called Spring Tool Suite download. You just search on. So here you go. So this is the IDE that you have to download for. And even you have the plugin for the VS Code. Okay, you can directly integrate the Spring Tools plugin into your VS Code. That way you have all Spring related features integrated into the VS Code itself. Or else you can straight away go and get this version of Spring Tools 4 for Eclipse, where you have a Linux version, you have a Mac version, and you have a Windows. Right now, I'm delivering this session from my Mac operating system, so it's not a Windows. So try to accustom to the demo which I'm going to show, because slightly it will be different between the Windows and Mac. Uh, Not of a much difference, just look at the menus and stuff like that. That will be a small difference, but other than that, it's all going to be the same, because the IDE which we are going to use is only the Spring tool suite. Okay, so from here you can just download it, you extract it, and you'll be able to access the application. I'm sorry, the IDE, and from there you can start developing your Spring Boot project. But listen, that this is an Eclipse based, as you can see here, right? Straight away they have mentioned it's Eclipse based IDE. It uses the full features of Eclipse itself. Eclipse is an IDE which we usually use to use it for developing the Java based applications. And Spring Tool Suite is built on top of that exclusively for helping us or helping the developers to quickly develop the Spring Boot application. So that's the idea behind using the STS, and most of the developers are much convenient in using STS. So if you have any questions, please do let me know, and we'll just go ahead and start the applications, creation of the application. So I guess there is no inconvenience that you're facing in viewing my IDE. If so, please do let me know if in case you have any challenges to view my IDE. Let me work on the technical thing. So I'm trying to maximize it. Okay. So right now you can see that an IDE which looks like this. So we just go ahead and hit the show view. I'm right now on the window menu. You can see here, right? So under the window, probably you'll be having something called preferences in your Windows operating system. So just go to the show view, and there you will find something called Project Explorer. Just clicking on the Project Explorer will help us bring this Project Explorer window or a tab on the left hand side of the IDE. Okay, so if in case you misplace this Project Explorer, it's pretty easy for us to bring in this Project Explorer back to the IDE by going to the window, show view, and hit the Project Explorer. Okay, so I already have something called a Spring Boot application is already there, which is enabled with the dev tools. I'm not going to use that, but we'll use it as a reference. I'm going to spin up an application from the scratch. So how do we create? There are multiple ways to create this application. One way is we can go to our browser, okay, and so there's something called Spring Initializer, okay. So it's actually a start.spring.io. So usually it was before it was started with IO, but now they've changed the domain. It's start.spring.io. It's a Spring Initializer. So just click on that Spring Initializer. Uh, it's start.spring.io. Okay, I'll just quickly share this. And just give it a try. If in case you haven't used this particular web page, then probably you can just quickly access this. It's start.spring.io, and this is one way to create a Spring Boot project. It's an initializer, means it's helping us to create the initial setup of the project. A complete project archive can be created. So what we can do here is we need to select the type of project that you want to create, whether it's a Groovy based project or a Kotlin or Maven. Of course, we are going to use Maven, which is a build tool, and the language that we are going to use to develop the application is Java, and then the version that we have is 3.3.5. So this is the way the current version is by default selected, but if you want to go to lower version, you can still go ahead and choose the one you wanted. The higher version of snapshot is also available. As you can see here, it's 3.4.0. Snapshot version is there. Snapshot versions are the one which is not a production version. Okay, but still you can use them. But 3.3.5 is officially the official release. It's a production release, and we'll be able to use that. And also we have something called 3.3.6. So all these are the one which are not production releases. So default is 3.3.5. So we'll go ahead and grab that. And here we have the option to provide the artifact informations about the project. So let's create a com dot vehicle management system. So I'm just giving something a group ID like com.vehicle.app. It's more similar like a package naming. So we can use the same here for the package name, and the artifact ID can be a vehicle demo or vehicle app. Okay, so that's going to be uh, the application name. Okay, vehicle app. And these are the project metadata, where the informations that we provide for creating a project. Then on the right hand side, you have the add dependencies, and from there you can go ahead and select the dependencies that you wanted to add. So let's say I just wanted to include Spring Web dependency, because we are going to create an web-based applications, MVC-based applications. So we need the dependency of Spring Web and whatnot. Let's say, for example, Spring Data JPA, we can include the in-memory database, but a H2 database. So if needed, you just add the security uh, dependency. So these are the libraries that we are trying to include into our application. So Spring Security is popping up, OAuth implementations related dependencies. A lot of dependencies are there. Let's say, for example, developer tools, specific dependencies are there, Spring Boot developer tools. So there are multiple dependencies. You can choose as per your requirement, but minimalistic is like we need Spring Web dependency. Uh, this is for web application. Can we create a Spring Boot application without having any of these dependencies? Yes, of course. What's the difference? If we don't include the Spring Web and no dependencies are added, then straight away we are just going to create a Spring Boot application with this setup. No libraries are included. Then will there be a choice to create a Spring Boot application? Yes, of course, we will be able to create a Spring Boot application. But the problem is that's going to be a core application, a Spring core application, but that's not designed for a web-based application. If you wanted a web-based application, then ideally we need to use something called a server. Okay, a web server is needed to develop a web application. So we need those essential components like web development components like MVC components, Tomcat servers, integrated or embedded Tomcat servers. We need all those stuffs in order to develop as a web-based applications or a backend web application. Then ideally we need to go for adding the dependencies. Otherwise, it's a standalone application, a normal Java application which we use to develop just by having a main method, a main class, and then start developing your own standalone applications or like desktop applications or stuff like that. So still we can go ahead and do that. We can create. So if you just click generate, that's it. It'll help us in bringing up the application, as you can see here, right? So this application is going to be the Spring Boot application. If you just extract it, it's a zip. You can see there's a source, main, Java. The package that we have mentioned is what is reflected, and there is a main class, vehicle app application, and this is going to have a main method. So this is a purely a standalone application. There's nothing relevant to the web or something like that. Still, this application is eligible to run. So let's go ahead and quickly visualize that. From the IDE also, we'll be able to create the project. Now, what we need to do is we need to import this project that we have downloaded, right? We have already downloaded the application with the help of the start.spring.io. If you want to import this, you can import it. You extract it, and then you go to your IDE and import. It's a Maven based application. So existing Maven project, and then browse. I repeat again, it's like from the Project Explorer, I'm right clicking, but usually what you can do is you can just go to the file. Okay, you have something called import. So there are multiple ways to import the project. That's what I'm trying to conclude here. So one is you can just sitting from the Project Explorer, right click and import. It opens the same dialog box, the dialog window, or you can even go for file menu and there you'll find an import option and you can search in for Maven and there you get the existing Maven project and hit next and click on browse and choose the vehicle app that we have downloaded. The file which is zip file, you can't choose that. You need to extract that zip file and keep it ready and click on open and finish. So this will load your Spring Boot application and you can notice that there's a boot flag is enabled. That means this application is a Spring Boot application. If it's not a Spring Boot based application, then usually we will not see this boot flag embedded into this vehicle app application. So if you just expand, you will see the same Maven based structure, a source structure like Java source folders are there. We have resources directories. We have pom.xml file. The Maven configuration files are landed. And if you see here in the pom.xml file, there are no much of a dependencies added except the starter. Okay, we have only the starter. And the version that they are using is 17. So meaning is if you go back, you can see that the Java's version is default selected to 17. That's why the POM is referring to the Java version of 17. If in case you want to work with Java 23, you can select that, but your system should have a compatibility of Java 23. So what I mean is we go to the terminal of mine. Sorry. So if you see my Java version, it's 22. So I don't have 23, but I can select 21. Java 21 is supportable because I have Java 22. But I don't have 23 in my machine, so it's not a good choice to choose 23. But 17 is fine, right? So JDK 17 is what is predominantly used by most of the industries today, and they are upgrading it to 21 as well. Recently, even in my project, in my organization, the applications are modernizing. We are modernizing our application into Java 21. So 17 is applicable, but if in case you want to work with more latest version and if you have that version installed in your machine, then probably you can go and choose that. Great. So that's how we bring up the application, but this is not a web-based application. Okay. So if you just go to the overview of it, you can see the packaging that is shown here is jar. So we will package this application into a jar application. Okay. Not as a war. This is not going to be a war. It's right now it's a jar. If in case you want it, because we are trying to bring embedded server, meaning as a Tomcat server, a web server, which is going to sit inside the application itself. So ideally, we are not going to use a war extension because there's a difference in using a jar and a war. If we use war, then this is not going to carry the embedded server. We are going to deploy them into an external server. So at that time, we can use war. Since it's an embedded server where the server itself is going to reside inside the application, then the packaging archive extension for the Spring Boot is jar. Okay. So the dependencies are just straight dependencies, just a Spring Boot starter. We haven't used any web dependencies as such. Fine. This is not what I wanted to do. So I'll just completely delete this project right now. We'll again come back from the first because that's a core application, right? But I just wanted to create a web application. Now let's do it not from here, but let's do it from here. Okay. From the IDE. So you can right click, new, you have the option to create a Java project, but you can also do it from the file menu, file, new. Okay. So right click on the Project Explorer and hit the new and go for other and search for Spring Startup project, or else go to file menu and there you will have the option to create a new Spring Boot Startup project. This is a much easier way. Okay. So just go to the file menu new, and then click the Spring Starter project. It again connects to the same website which we connected just now, start.spring.io, and the UI what you're seeing here is what is exactly replicated here as well. Okay, so just go and choose Maven jar packaging. Let's say I'm going to use 21 for this. It's a Java based application, and I'm going to use com.vehicle app. And here again, vehicle app. So the application name is going to be vehicle app again. So that's it. Whatever we chose here, whatever we have feeded in here is what I'm trying to do here as well. You can hit next. And here again, we have the dependencies to be chosen. So the dependencies that we are going to choose here is web dependency, the very first thing. Spring Web need to be added. And then I need to add data JPA. So let's say Spring. We'll discuss about what the Spring Data JPA is shortly. Probably if you're aware, you might be knowing it. It's all helping us to connect to the backend database, right? So then we have in-memory database. I want to use an in-memory database, so I'm just using H2. We can connect to the backend database like MySQL, but still it's a demonstration part, right? Probably in the next upcoming connect sessions, we'll be having more real-time connect with the database, and then you'll be having more experience in learning that as well. Okay, so these are the three major dependencies that I need right now, which is Spring Data JPA, H2 database, and Spring Web dependency. Okay, you can make a note of it. So just grab this. So okay, so I've just given that screenshot of this image. You can just take a look at it. Uh, so after adding these dependencies, you can hit next and click finish. So this will help you to create a project right up here in the Project Explorer section. I guess I've changed the name. Just a sec. Oh, just kept the artifact here, but the name I didn't change. 21, rest is all the same. So I'm just creating the project again because I forgot to mention the name of the project up. So let me drop this. So here we have the vehicle app created. So a default class gets created and the class is annotated with that Spring Boot application. This makes the magical thing for the entire application. At Spring Boot application is the main annotation that we see when it comes to the Spring Boot. It looks like a main method. Of course, it's a main method. And then we have some lines of code here. The idea here is this is the key file. Okay, Spring Boot runs on top of this main method only and the main class. So this class is already annotated with Spring Boot application, marking this application as a Spring Boot enabled with auto configurations wherever the configuration is needed automatically it will do. That's the main power of Spring Boot. The configuration parts are automated, right? So if I hover the cursor on top of this, you can see the list of annotations that's been used here. Okay, one is you can see I'm not sure if it's visible, it might be tiny. I'll just tell you that one is at Spring Boot configuration. That's an annotation that's been used at Spring Boot configuration. And then we have something called at enable configuration. That's another annotation that's been used at enable configuration. And one more thing that's required here is the component scan, scanning for all the components and automatically inject them and create an instance for it. So it needs to scan for all the components, all Spring components, whatever is there in this package will be scanned for. Now you can see there are three annotations are clubbed together, right, into a single annotation. In the initial version of Spring Boot, we used to work this way. In order to enable a Spring Boot application, we need to provide Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan, right? But nowadays, as the version got upgraded, they simplified the usage. We need not mention it with all these three layers of annotations. I'm sorry. Just you can mention it with single annotation, and that annotation name is nothing but the Spring Boot application. Are you getting this point? So these three annotation, what it does is marking this as a Spring Boot application and making all the Spring Boot configurations to be automated. Enable the auto configurations. Okay, Spring Boot purpose is configuration need to be automated. Like for example, let's say I want to spin up the application with connected to the backend DB. Okay, so I need to include all the DB relevant dependencies. All those will be auto configured. We need not create the data source. Data source will be automatically created. So many stuffs which can be automated with the help of Spring Boot, and that's been done with the help of this annotation called at enable auto configuration. You have something called component scan. At component scan, this, as I said, in order to scan through the complete package and then understand the presence of components and create an instance. IOC container comes into the picture in version of control. That IOC container will get into the picture and start looking for all the components within the project and start creating an instance for all the classes. All these three are now grabbed into a single annotation called at Spring Boot application. Is this clear? So this is the main understanding which you need to gain, because just like looking at that Spring Boot application doesn't do anything. Internally, we have all these three major annotations sitting together. Putting all these three annotations clubbed together is what we have formed with this single annotation called at Spring Boot application. Is this clear? So if you have any questions on this basics, please do let me know. You can, I mean, if you have any questions or you want to post some questions on the chat, you can also do that. So that let's have a little bit of interactions, because the purpose of this session is to clarify your doubts. Learnings, you can get it. There are multiple resources are there. You can go to YouTube, you can go to blogs, and you can learn things, but you need some guidance. The Connect sessions are meant for that, to give you guidance. I don't want to go from this scratch actually, but since it's a first Connect session, I just wanted to give you people an idea of how to start from the base. Okay, so any recording videos are available on Spring and Spring Boot. No, I guess there is nothing on Spring Boot from my side, because usually, as I said in the initial time, if it's a live session, recordings will not be done. So, but this is going to be recorded for one time. Okay, going forward, it will not be recorded, but no matter whatever I'm explaining, it's all there out in internet. I'm again saying whatever steps that I'm trying to explain is all out there in internet. You just go to YouTube. There are hundreds of YouTubers, technical guys are there who can give you the same knowledge of what I'm sharing. The idea of this Connect session, as I mentioned, it's to make sure that the gap need to be filled. You will have too many doubts. That gap need to be bridged. That's the main intention of this connect session. Okay, so there's another question. So if I miss any one annotation among three, then I can create the Spring Boot application. I'm sorry, I can't create the Spring Boot application. Uh, yeah, see, let's put up this way. If I comment this, okay, you're not going to use Spring Boot application annotation. Instead, you are going to use these three to make this as a Spring Boot application. This will work as a Spring Boot application. But all three have to be used. Yes, of course. You're going to use all these three at Spring Boot configuration, at enable auto configuration, at component scan. All three annotations will lead to the creation of Spring Boot app. Okay. If I miss one, it's understandable, right? If I don't use at component scan, then automatically the components are not going to be scanned. Let's say I create one repository class, I create one service class, I create one controller class. Who will create an instance for those class? The idea of Spring is the instance need to be created automatically by the IOC container. So we need to scan for all the classes of the Spring components and we need to create an instance. Who will create an instance? The IOC container will create the instance, the inversion of control container, right? IOC is the design pattern, right? IOC container will create an instance for all the Spring enabled components. In order to refer the IOC, hey IOC, see that, go and scan all my project. Whatever Spring components you find, please ensure that you create an instance for all. So we are not responsible for creating an instance. That's the meaning. So ideally, we need to do this. Spring Boot is what? It's automating stuff, right? Otherwise, we need to go for the traditional Spring application to develop. Everything need to be done manually by us. But Spring Boot is automating stuff. So at enable auto configuration, automatically configuration need to be done by the Spring Boot itself. So we need to add this annotation. At Spring Boot configuration, whatever configuration that's required for making this as a Spring Boot application, that also need to be automated. And for that, we have the Spring Boot configuration. So we need to have all the three to keep this application stayed as a Spring Boot application. But no worries, you need not worry upon that. You don't need to have these three annotations anymore. Just add a single annotations, you are done. So automatically all three annotations are going to be included. When you hover the cursor on top of this annotation itself, you can learn, you can see that all the three annotations are embedded. All these three annotations are embedded within the at Spring Boot application itself. That's the meaning up here. Hope you're getting it. Do anyone have any other question? Oh, okay. I'm telling you to Spring Boot. So if you can show from very basics like installation so that we can do the project parallelly with you. Yeah, of course, we will spend some time in the upcoming Connect sessions. Okay, it's going to be parallel work. What I'm going to do is I'll show the stuff and you do it. Okay, I'll show and you do it. So we'll do that way so that it'll be more interesting as well. But today being a first day and first Connect session, I don't want to give too much of time for that. So what I wanted you people is to be ready with all these softwares, probably next Connect session. I'll try to see next week, we'll again have a Connect. So what we can do is you keep all these things ready. So you need to get your STS downloaded. You need to get your Java installed. Okay, JDK installations have to be done. So you can just go to the OpenJDK and you can get the versions of 21 or 22 or 23, or even you can go for Oracle Java download and get your Java installed. I don't think you need much of basic inputs on that. You know how to do the stuff. So just go ahead and grab the version that you want to download and keep it ready. Once if it is done, then probably you'll be able to follow up with whatever I'm going to say in the next Connect sessions. Yeah. So use Spring Initializer to get the project structure. Actually, I'm not getting that question. Use Spring Initializer to get the project structure. That is one way. As I said, this is one way to create the project the whole project. Okay. The entire Spring Boot application project can be created. It's just a project structure. Yes, it just creates a project structure and we can import it into our Spring tool suite. That is one way of creating a Spring Boot application, or from the IDE itself, you can create a Spring Boot application. And that's what I stated here. File new Spring startup project. So by this way, also you can create the project here itself, or you can just go to the start.spring.io and create it. Usually people do it with this ID because that's a more convenient way to do it, right? Yes. Is your questions addressed? So any other question? I mean, if really something stops you from understanding, please do ask me. Yes, please go ahead. Gayatri is having a question. So if you don't have a main method in the Spring Boot application, then obviously your Spring Boot application will not spin up, will not start. Any Java applications, forget about Spring Boot. Any Java application you want to run, you need one main class, the class which should carry a main method. So Spring Boot application, even though it's a web-based application that we are going to design, since it's a standalone web-based application where we have the embedded server within the application, the logic of starting the application will all happen only when the main method is there. If the main method is not present, then you will not be able to spin up your Spring Boot application. Look at this line number 19. You can understand. What this line says is run the Spring Boot application. So it's run means it's not technically it's not instructing. It's going to do some stuff. So you'll have some set of logic written inside this run implementation at the runtime. It will help us to figure out the way to spin up this Spring Boot application. Okay, but main method is a normal main method which we usually have it in our Java application. Public static void main is a common main method that we used to have, right? So that's the one that you are looking out right now. So Spring application dot run, and which application need to be run? This application. So the main class name is referred here, and the runtime arguments are the parameter to this run method. If you don't have this, then obviously you will not be able to run the Spring Boot application at all. There is a meaning. Yeah, I guess. So let's say I just want to run this application now. Okay, I'm going to spin up this application. See, so to run this application, you can go to this main class and click this run option, or you can right click from the class file and run as Spring Boot application or Java application. Either way, it's fine. It will start the application. You can see the application got started. There is a Spring banner comes in, the Spring Boot banner comes in, and you will notice that the application is running under the specific port. It got started. I'm not sure if it's visible, so I'll just copy paste it here. So what the console says is, it says the Tomcat started. The default server that we have embedded within the application is Tomcat, running under the port of 8080, and then you have the uh, the 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 started of the application status, which got started in just 1.19 seconds. That fast this application used to run, the Spring Boot application. That is a meaning. Is this clear? So now what I'm going to do right now is somewhere. Okay. So what if in case we don't have the main method? Okay. So I'm commenting the main method. Just try to stop the application and run it again. Now there it comes. Main method not found. You can look at the error here. You will not be able to start your application without this. I'm sorry. So it says pretty clearly, error, main method not found in class called vehicle application. So you will not be able to run the application. So it automatically figure out that this is the main class, because in the project structure, you can see this is the class that been seen as a main class. Spring Boot itself will recognize that way. This will be treated as a main application class. Coming to the main application class, it is not finding the presence of main method. And since there is no presence of main method, obviously it ends up with an error. So we need to be very clear that every Spring Boot application should carry this main method. If at all, if it's going to be spinned up as a standalone embedded server. If you're going to deploy explicitly in some WebLogic server or JBoss server, then probably we ourselves will eliminate this use of main method. We don't need to have the main method at that time because it's going to be spinned up as a web application in an external server. But now this has to be spinned up with an embedded server. We need to mandatorily carry this main method. Going forward, we are going to develop more of microservice based applications, self-executable applications. So this is the modernized way of developing applications. So any Spring Boot applications, we should have main method. Does it make sense? And is the question addressed? Okay. So instead of having main method, can I have only static method and have these Spring application dot run to start my Spring Boot? Oh, that's what I'm saying. See, this line, to run the application, we need some main entry method, right? Main is no Java application runs without main method. So even if you just say, can I have, where will you place this line? Come on, there should be some meaning to have this line placed, right? Now, in order to call the run, you need to pass the arguments. From where you will get the arguments? Command line arguments. The command line arguments will come from the main method. This is something common in C and C++. Even in C and C++, you used to have the main method, right? So that's the kind of a stuff which I'm trying to say here, right? So where we have the main method, which is mandatorily needed, and underneath that we will have this line to spin up the Spring Boot application. This will be the scope for starting the Spring application. But to enter entry level method, we need any Java application you create, and that's all about the main method. You're getting it? Yeah. Any other question?
Yes, sir. Gayatri this side.
Yeah.
So in you told right. So entry point is main method. So I have one question which I faced in my interview experience where instead of having this main, can I have only a static method?
Mm.
So inside the static method, I can have the same string array of arguments.
Mm. Yeah, see, static method, you mean to say, I mean, any static method you want to, let's say you want to give it as, let's say main one, I'm just giving it as a main one. So this is a static method again, right?
Correct.
So what you mean to say is you just want to start this application, but what system looks up is only for the main method.
Okay.
This is also a static method, which takes a string arguments. Can be this way. So let's say I have a static block. Okay. So within the static block, you're going to drop in this particular line. Is that possible? But again, there is a question. How do we bring in the arguments? Because static blocks will not carry any arguments. Yeah, it does not carry any arguments. So you need to pass the arguments as per the run method parameter. One is the application class. Another one is the arguments, command line arguments. Command line arguments will come only from the picture of main. So see, main is something which is invoked by the JVM. Java Virtual Machine will invoke the main method automatically, right? Any Java application you design, JVM is the one who picks the main method first. You don't have any alternate for the main. Okay. So just by giving a main one or any other name, let it be a static. It's just a static method. So let's say I just want to define summary. Will that make sense? Of course, it's a static method, but who will not recognize this? JVM will not recognize because JVM is instructed to recognize only the method structure as main. So it should be main only. You can't give a alternate name for that. That's practically not possible. You're getting it?
Yeah, I got. And again, one more question. So instead of having this main, I'll have one static method, and
Hmm.
I can call the static method with the class name, right? So will that work? I will pass the argument in that while calling that static method.
I mean, you want to say you want to create a static method here,
Here
static
instead of
void.
main, I have main one method which is having this Spring application dot run. And somewhere if I call this static method along with the argument, then
Correct. So from where you will call? You need some entry. Who is the entry? The overall Java application's entry is what?
main method only. Okay.
Of course, somewhere you need to have the method. So let's say, for example, you do it this way. Can I do it this way? So I comment it from the main method. I'm going to call summary of. Okay. I'm just calling this static method since it's a static method, and this is going to have the arguments as a parameter. And this arguments, what you're getting in the main method is what I'm going to pass. And by this way, let's remove this. But ideally, I don't think this makes any sense. It will start, but what is the point? Anyways, we need to have the main method. You're getting it, right? Instead of having another static method and then dropping in that particular line, why do we need to complicate this? Straight away, we can drop it here. There should be some
Okay.
reason for having it. Of course, if there is any use case to have such kind of a flow, it makes sense, but no application required that kind of a flow.
Okay. Yeah. Clear, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So main, any method you want to call in Java, the very first method that comes in the hierarchy, the first method that need to be begin with is none other than your main method. And that to the flow is like JVM recognized in that way, like public static void main. So what if in case if I give int as a return type for the main? Okay. Anyways, let's say I'm going to return int here, some return of 10. Okay. Now let's go ahead and spin up this application. If you spin up this application, you will again see JVM says, hey, I cannot recognize main because even the method structure is not correct. So public static void main is the only structure that JVM recognize. Okay. Yeah. Any other question? I guess someone was typing there. So I'm taking more questions because that's the point of this technical connect. Okay. Otherwise, it's like going to be a gyans of giving all information. Spring Boot is an ocean. Okay. So we have a lot of time. So as we go along, we'll have more connect sessions and we'll learn a lot of stuff. Yeah. So anyone have any other question? Others can also ask question, even if it's a silly question, doesn't matter. See, Gayatri is not thinking that asking this question is a silly question, but she asks, and that's when the doubts can be clarified. So you need not worry upon, that's what I'm saying. Even if it's a silly question, let take this connect session to be meant for that. Addressing silly questions. Most of you might be aware in this group, okay? Few people might be aware what I'm trying to say. That's fine. But you should understand what is the main essence of this application and how depth we understand can help you to get through your interviews. If you're sitting in front of the interview, then if someone probably, I'm not sure if Gayatri was asked a question, will you be able to invoke a Spring Boot application without having a main method? If such was a question, I would say yes, there is a way to spin up the Spring Boot application without even having a main method. In that case, what we have to do is we need to turn around the entire application to a var, not as a jar, as I already told you here, right? So when it is a var, then we have a different way of creating the Spring Boot application. It's entirely a different step of flow so that we'll be able to explicitly deploy in external servers like WebLogic, JBoss. There will be some external servers. We'll also have some one connect session exclusively for that. At that time, you will not even see a main method, okay, in the Spring Boot application, but we alternate to the main method need to be provided because we are going to deploy it in some external server. But now I'm not deploying in any external server. Rather, I'm deploying it in the embedded server. A Tomcat is already present inside this project. Okay, and it's going to invoke that Tomcat. So it's all embedded. So in this case, the the basic structure of a Spring Boot main class should carry a main method, which is mandatory. You cannot compromise on that. That's the end result. How do you set up and use Spring caching to implement for frequent access data? Could you? Okay, that yeah, that needs demonstrations, right? So it's more of multiple flows are there. I can understand. It's probably will have a connect session exclusively on let's say a caching. So we need to have, in general, I'll just give you, okay. In general, I'll give you some basics of what this caching is does. So what exactly happens is from the web application when multiple users are requesting, right? So you wanted to get the details about car. That's the thing that I wanted to demonstrate today. So car data you want to get. So user is hitting this particular application to collect more information about the car details. So at present, it's all about the 100 users who are requesting this particular application. Next time it's going to be, let's say, 1,000 users. So the number of users grows. And next time it's going to be 2,500 users. Now, what happens is as the number grows at one point of time, simultaneously, if 25,000 users are going to give a request. Now, what happens is if that too the same endpoint is going to be requested for multiple times, let's say 4 times each user is going to give, then it's 25,000 requests into 4, the same users, and that gives you to a number of 100,000, right? So 100,000 request is going to be generated by the user. 100,000 request will go not only to the application, the request also goes to the DB, the database, because from the DB only you will be able to fetch the data. So the 100,000 request comes to the application means 100,000 request goes to the DB also. So more number of users, more number of requests, more number of operations need to be done by the application in order to connect to the backend DB and pull the data. So what we can do is 25,000 users is requesting, that's fine. But instead of 4 times, 5 times doesn't matter. When the user is fetching this particular data from the DB, 25,000 users are coming and fetching their data. All the data will be stored temporarily, okay, temporarily in cache. So cache in general, cache, right? In mobile phone, they used to ask, the applications will ask you, or the mobile by itself will say, Android phones will all throw some informations or notifications saying that you can clear cache, or what you do in the Chrome browser. Okay, after you use too much websites and you wanted to free up some memory, then you will clear the cache. So like which the data that's given for 25,000 users will all be stored in the cache. Cache is an in memory to the application. Okay, in memory to the application, or it can be even external to the application. There are two types of caches we have. One is a cache memory. Let's say I have some 250 MB of memory exclusively as an in memory. So I can store this 25,000 users record in the in memory, okay, inside the application. Next time when the user is requesting, okay, the next 3 times, I said 4 times, right? Very first time, the data will be stored in the cache. The next 3 times, the data will not be fetched from the DB. So you need not go all the way to the server, DB server, to pull the data. Instead, you can take it from the in-memory cache storage where the data will be frequently accessed. That's what Praveen's question was. So Praveen was asking question, we will be frequently accessing the data at the time, how we can make use of the cache. Of course, Spring Boot has a better choice, better way, easier way to integrate cache mechanisms. We have something called Redis. I also posted some post on cache. So Redis is one of the predominantly used caching tool. So it's commercial, but it's also open source. We can use it. But ideally, cache implementation is all will take some time because we need to set up the complete application to do it. We need to bring the I'm not sure if that can be seen here. So you can see there is a Redis search and query is all Spring Data Redis is all relevant to that Redis thing. Okay, the cache thing which we can use. But Redis as a Redis also we need to have some. There is something called Hcache, which is not available here. These are external dependencies which we need to include. Not readily available from the Spring Boot, but we can download it from the Maven. So we need to go ahead and add it into the pom.xml file. The dependencies need to be added, and we need to integrate the cache. That needs us exclusive discussions. Probably we'll take it up later, but this is the overall understanding. So instead of spending too many requests going to the DB server, you can stop that. So how many times the request will go to the DB now? What is the understanding from my explanations which you get? Tell me. It's just a small question which I'm asking. So the use case is that this 25,000 into 4 equals 100,000 request, and that goes to your database. 100,000 requests goes to the database. Now, if we enable cache in my use case, what does it mean? How many time will the request will go for the DB if we enable cache? Okay. So yeah, you're correct. So what happens here is 25,000 requests alone will go. 25,000 requests alone will go instead of 100,000. Why? The remaining, it won't go to the DB to fetch the data. It will fetch it from where itself? From the cache where the memory is already available within the application, and it will try to fetch it from the cached memory itself rather than going to the DB. So round trip is reduced, right? Again and again going and hitting the DB is getting reduced. That's what the cache is all about here. And we enable it with the set of dependencies, and we will have a separate understanding for that, or a separate connect session which will help us to understand that. Yeah, one-time enablement. Yeah, so Pooja, you're also right. It's 25,000. Yes. Is this clear? So that's a basic thing, and that is a which one better, auto wired or constructor injection required args construct. Constructor injection requires args constructor. Yeah, okay. So totally that's again a different topic of discussion, but um I'll just give you at auto wired is something which is not advisable now. So we just go only for the constructor based injection. But for our convenient, we are also still using the applications are still using auto wired. But what official Spring document says is you better avoid using at auto wired, because there are some glitches in using at auto wired when there are too many dependencies are coming into the picture, and usage of constructor-based wiring, constructor-based injections are advisable, is what the Spring official documentation says. So constructor with arguments, or you can go for Lombok to reduce your number of constructor arguments assignment. You can use a Lombok library to ease up your code. That's a different story, but ideally constructor based injection, okay, constructor arguments based injections are advisable rather than using at auto wired. Okay. Okay, I guess we are running out of time, so any questions on this till this is a very basic thing. So just have this application created this way, and that's all. You're ready to go and spin up your application. Your application will start, your Spring Boot application will get started. And just notice the console. You need to understand what's there in the console. That's something very important. So you need to closely monitor and see how it is working. I'm sorry, this is a different application. Sorry. Yes, I guess what is included? Okay, we have added data JPF. Fine, that's fine. So that's the reason Hikari is displayed. Start again, and the application is up and running. Okay. So we'll quickly move ahead and have a little more learning before we end up the session, because we can take more informations in. So this is a very basic thing. Now what we are going to do is we are just going to create the application. So I'm just going to create another package, name it as controller. I'm just going to create a controller class within this package. Now notice that whatever you're seeing here, right? So this controller package have to be hierarchically present in this order. com.vehicle.app is the base package. This is your base package. So when you have the base package, all your further packages which you are trying to create should be created under this base package, which is your app, com.vehicle.app, right? Under this base package only we need to create the sub packages. Otherwise the component scan will be in trouble. Okay, you will be having some challenges in the component scan. So ensure that you have the base packages to be noted. So once your base packages is ready, then you will be able to create all sub packages from that base package only. Is that clear? Just a second, I'm just trying to plug in my external device. Yeah. So I hope you are able to follow up with what I'm saying here. So I missed it. Okay. So just a quick understanding here. Okay, I'm not able to use my drawing tool. So so the thing is, once you create the sub package, as I was stating here, right, the controller which comes under the app, you can go ahead and create one new class called a car or vehicle controller. So controller is the base for getting the request from the user. So vehicle controller class need to be created under the controller package. And this need to be annotated with a controller annotation. Sorry, spelling mistake there. So just go ahead and import the package for this annotation, or org.springframework.stereotype.controller. So here we have the controller class, and we are going to define a method called public, let's say, string get car details. I'm going to denote this as at get mapping. And one more thing that I have to do here is at response body, because I'm just going to straight away return a string response, return okay. Now, these are some of the annotations that we usually use in creating a controller. So get mapping is a get request. We are going to get the get request from the user. There are multiple HTTP request methods are there, right? I hope you might be aware of it. If not, just go ahead and have some glimpse on it. Get, post, put, patch, delete, right? All these are the HTTP request methods. In that, we are saying that this method will be accessed via the get mapping. Okay, so here I can give a name, endpoint name, like let's say cars. Okay, so that's the endpoint that we need to use in order to access this get car details method, and this returns just a string, list of string. So it's a REST endpoint. So since I'm not using the REST based controller, it's an ordinary controller, a normal controller. We need to have this additional annotation called response body to respond the string straight away into the response body. There is meaning. This is a very good understanding because these are all some interview perspective which comes in. So combination of at controller and at response body have to go hand in hand. Okay, let's quickly spin up this application now. Application is up and running. Now what we can do, we can just go to a tool called Postman API. This is an API client tool. Okay, or even you can use your plain browser itself, doesn't matter. So this application is running under which port? The port number which I referred just now, default. This application is started and the Tomcat is running under the port called 8080, right? Tomcat started on port 8080 of HTTP, which with the context path of slash. So what we need to do is to address this HTTP colon double backslash localhost. Localhost is the local mission server, IP. Probably it's not an IP. It's just localhost. Localhost means it's referring to which address? Local missions address. That's what we call it as localhost. And the port that we need to bind here is 8080. 8080 is the port, right? Slash. Okay. Which endpoint do we need to access? Is the cars endpoint. So we have this cars here. So let's say cars and hit enter. And now you can see you have this the Honda, Audi, and BMW coming into the picture. You're getting it? So means we are trying to respond with that set of string informations straight away into the request as in a response. So these Honda, Audi, and BMW are responded as in a string. And for this combination, it's a get request, what we are sending. The same thing which you can do it within this Postman. So you can go to the Postman tool and open the new tab, and you can see the list of methods as I was mentioning. The get, post, put, patch, delete is all. The default is the get. You can provide that endpoint, and here also you will get the same response. There is meaning. Is this clear? This is just a basic thing what I'm trying to explain here, but there can be multiple mappings that we can use. Post mapping, put mapping, there are multiple mappings are there. Now, instead of having this combination of controller and at response body, what we can do is we can straight away use one annotation called at rest controller. Okay, at rest controller. If we use at rest controller, then literally we don't need to use at response body, because if you hover the cursor on top of the at rest controller, by default, what's there inside this at rest controller is an at response body. At response body is inbuilt within this uh, at-rest controller itself. So we don't need the response body separately to be embedded within every endpoint methods. It's there by default. So going forward, when you're creating a REST-based applications, okay, then it's better to use REST controller rather than controller. You're getting it? So we can avoid those additional annotations to be used. Just use the get mapping and go ahead and you'll be able to get it. Like if I go to the Postman, let's say, let's quickly add some other car, let's say Honda, Audi, BMW, Maruti, and just spin up this application again. Because every change you make, we need to restart the application to get reflected because it has to get redeployed into the embedded server of Tomcat. Now you just go and send request, you'll get this. So still it works. Even after I remove that response body, it works because I'm replacing the controller to an at-rest controller. Now if you go back and change this request method to post and send it, it will throw an method not allowed. Why method not allowed response is coming in? If you go to this is default is going to be get. That's why I'm taking you to the Postman. If you send it as a post request, there is no method available. The method that is available is only to accept what? Get. For this endpoint, what you have given here, the car's endpoint will accept only what type of a request? Get request. You should come, the user or the client should come from the get request. But you're coming from where? From the post. So it says method not allowed and the server response error is 405. So 405, 405 or 405 is a method not allowed exception or an error. Why method not allowed? Because you're coming as a post, but what is accepted for this endpoint is get. If you change it to get, then this error will be resolved, right? That's the base understanding. Now you can see the response comes. Does it make sense? So I'll just stop here. I know that I'm giving too much of information, but this is the base thing. At response body should be added before the method and not before the class. Exactly. Yes. So as in this case, the at response body is added on the method, but you can also add it here. There's no much of a harm in referring to it. Okay. So what is the difference? The difference is this class level, we are enabling an at response body. So again, you don't need to give the at response body on the method level. You can go back again to make use of your controller with at response body, but that combination is not required anymore. You don't need to use them. Usually the response bodies are the method levels that will be defined as and when required. But now that's not required because we have the enhanced REST based controllers are in picture. So the REST based controllers are annotated with at rest controller to mark that as a REST based controllers or REST based application. These are all REST application. What we are sending in as a request, REST APIs. These are REST APIs. So we enable it as a REST controller. But in earlier days in Spring MVCs, when I was working, I used to work with this combination of response body and controller. I'm staying pretty what to say? I would say like somewhere 7 to 8 to 9 years back, I was working with a combination of response body and controller. Okay, so REST controller is a pretty good annotation which we represented as a REST based application to combine both controller and response body together to give the response back to the user. So this is the way you actually create your controller class and start defining your controller endpoint methods, and you just return whatever you wanted. Yeah, so now let's take some set of questions before we move ahead. I guess there's the question which is already raised. Vehicle have and all sub package will start. Exactly. Yeah. So you're right. So base package is this, and under that base package, I'm sorry. Yeah, under this base package, we will have the sub packages to be created. So if I want to create, let's say, service package, I'll go ahead and create another package from the base package. See, com.vehicle.app.service and finish. Okay, then we just go ahead and create another package called entity. But all these are lined up within this base package only, right? You can see the structure right now. I haven't created any class underneath these packages. but you can see its base package is this. App is the base package, till app is a base package. Under that, we have some set of child packages or sub packages to be defined. That's the structure in which a Spring Boot will reside. Okay, there's another question from Ketan, and he says like why we are not calling this get car details method from the main method. We need not. This is a web-based application. That's what I'm saying. Controllers are meant for responding as a REST-based response. Someone is calling this method. Okay, so it's based on the endpoint that we are calling it through the endpoint instead of method. This will be called by dispatcher servlet. There's something called dispatcher servlet who actually invokes this. This dispatcher servlet is a friend controller. Okay, they are called as friend controller, which is not visible to us because Spring Boot will automatically create those dispatcher servlet and keep it ready. It's a friend controller. So when we send a request, right? When we send a request from here, this request will be catered by the dispatcher servlet, and the dispatcher servlet will make use of this endpoint name cars. And this dispatcher servlet will come to the vehicle controller and search for the cars endpoint. Once he finds the cars endpoint, immediately that respective method will be invoked automatically by this dispatcher servlet and get the response back for us. So the web applications will never be called through an explicit invocation of the methods. It's all internally done by the servlets. So servlet calls will all be done, but that's again a basic thing which you should learn as a servlet. But if you're not aware, these are hidden informations. So in depth, it's like it works like dispatcher servlet and then goes to this invocation of the method, which is not visible for us. It is automated and it is internally present with the help of Spring framework. There is a meaning. So you will never call this method sitting from the main method. It doesn't make sense. There's no need to call this method. This method will be invoked as and when you send a request with the endpoint called cars endpoint from your browser or from your any I mean the REST client tools. You'll be able to send the request. The idea here is to develop a web-based applications, right? So there is no need for a standalone way of approach. Usually in the standalone, what we do is we will call those methods. Whatever method you define in some other class, you will use those vehicle controller, let's say, for example, vehicle controller object dot get car details. This is what you're asking for. This is not required anymore. These are web applications. These are not standalone applications. I hope you are getting some informations out of this. And can we have the project without base packages and only base package plus controller, or base package plus? Can we have the project without base package? I'm not getting your question exactly. Base package is something essential. We need to have some base package. If you don't have a base package, then your entire project is a mess up. No project should exist without any base package. So it's good to have the base package. Under the base package, you can have sub packages to align your class structures. So controllers will all go inside the controller. Entity classes will all go into the entity. Let's say under the entity class, I'm going to create something called car. There's a class called car. Okay, this is going to be called as an entity class. So I'm going to mark this. It's an entity representation. Okay, this is an entity class. So entity class will go into the entity. Service class will go into the service. So vehicle service. This will be marked as at service. And we have something called DAO. And that's a sub package that we will create from the base package. And here we are going to drop in the class called vehicle DAO. And this class can be annotated with something like at repository. So there are annotations, multiple annotations are there, which we can use to mark the class as a service class, repository class, and stuff like that. Now you can see from the base package, we have lined up with multiple other sub packages, and each package is having their own respective classes. This is how a real-time application have to be developed with. Okay, so
Okay.
please,
S-
yeah, please follow this structure. Yeah.
Okay, so as per the standard structure, we can have the base package, and below, when we are trying to create sub package, the base package structure will be there. On top of that, we can add whatever the controller or DAO, whatever we need. But com.vehicle.app, if I delete that and I will move the vehicle app application.java to any other sub package.
This one.
I'll move that class to controller level or DAO level or some other level.
Hmm.
Uh,
It won't work because this is a main class. The main class have to be resided only in the base package.
okay.
You're getting it. So this class should reside in the base package. So you should have one structure of this base package first, and then only you need to go for the child packages. So if you just drag and drop this inside the controller, okay,
Mm,
and you delete
mm,
this com.vehicle.app, if you delete the
mm.
com.vehicle.app, the entire package will get impacted because all these packages are relying on this standard of com.vehicle.app. It looks like
Okay.
you will not be able to delete, because it will delete all these also.
Oh,
You're getting it?
okay. Yeah.
See, yeah, this looks like a package, but actually you should go ahead and see it in the folder. It's a folder. It's
Okay,
actually
okay. Uh-huh.
a
Okay.
folder. See, vehicle app. Okay.
Mm.
So if you get into the vehicle app, source, main, Java, here where our package starts. Source, main, Java, you can see com. Okay. Inside the com, we have vehicle folder. Inside the vehicle folder, there's an app folder. Inside the app folder, you have all the other subfolders. Now, what you are saying is, I will go and delete this. If you delete this, what will also get deleted? All the subfolders and files, everything will get deleted, right?
Yeah. Got it, sir.
So packages are nothing but just the folders. If you go behind the project, original project place location, you will find only them as a folders. So if you go and delete the parent folder, if I delete this folder, what exactly happens is it will delete the subfolders also. That is a meaning. But what we technically call in Java is like packages. They are all packages. That is a meaning. Okay.
Yeah, okay, sir. Got it. Thank you.
Yes. So someone was having any question? Any other question relevant to this? 80. Yeah. So what we saw is like how to get some response from the user is by defining a controller and then getting the thing. But we can also go ahead and start integrating some DB thing, okay, database thing, and we can use it. That's the reason I just went for in-memory database called H2 database here. If you see, I've already included the library for H2 database, means we have a H2 database readily available. We use JDBC, right? Java database connectivity to start writing all the code to communicate with the database. Traditionally in Java applications, we use JDBC. After Spring Framework came into the picture, Spring JDBC got introduced, which will ease up the developer's job to quickly define your code to interact with the DB. But today we live in a world of JPA, Java Persistence API, where Hibernate came into the picture. After Hibernate came into the picture, Spring Framework enhanced their library to Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA will further ease up the developer's role to quickly reduce the lines of codes in communicating with the DB. So the history is like this. It all started from the main uh, main module of database connectivity is all started with JDBC. After JDBC, coming to the Spring, they introduced something called Spring JDBC, but they also follow the standard of JDBC. From Spring JDBC, we can upgrade them to Spring Data JPA, where actually it's all about the JPA, Java Persistence API, they call it as Java Persistence API. And after the Spring Data JPA, I mean, it's integrated with a framework called Hibernate. So we need internally use an Hibernate framework. Hibernate is a object relational management framework. like how we have a OOPS framework and so on. The same way we have ORM framework. Hibernate is a ORM framework. So we going forward in the Spring Boot application development, we'll be using only Spring Data JPA to quickly develop our application in order to communicate with the database rather than using a traditional JDBC or Spring JDBC. Spring JDBC will also use some lines of code. I'll show you a example right away. So I have this code readily available. If you see here, this is the way we need to write for a Spring JDBC based code. So it looks like this. If in case you wanted to use Spring JDBC framework, I'm sorry, library, still you can go and do, but everything need to be done a little bit manually from our end. See, so we write a class, we use something called JDBC template, and we inject the JDBC template, and then we use the JDBC template to define a query where we use the select queries to get the data from the car table and then map it to the object of the car object and then return the list of car object. So all these are manual codes where we usually do it with Spring JDBC. But when it comes to Spring Data JPA, we don't need to write these many complex lines of codes. Rather, just write this line of code. That's all. You're done. The rest will be automatically taken care by the uh, dynamic classes that's going to be implemented by the Spring Data JPA library itself. So I define some interface, and there is something called JPA repository in the library of Spring Data JPA. We need to say which is your entity class, the relevancy to the table, car, and their primary key data type. And you go to the car, you go and define a method called find by make. And ignoring case will automatically ignore this case. What this one line will do is, this one line will do the job of this query. Just look at this line of code. How simple and how easy it is going to be. We are not going to write any query to fetch the data. Select staff from car where car.make, we use upper, car.make equals upper of the input value. If the user is asking for give me Honda, the user will give it like this Honda. But the database, how it is kept as is Honda. So when you search with Honda like this, you will not get any result. It's a zero record return because it's an uppercase. So what they are doing is taking this Honda as an input from the user and dropping it in an upper method, converting it to an uppercase, mapped with the column of the upper again, okay, in order to resolve the uh, casing problem. So they use this method invoked in the query and then order by ID. Okay. So now here what we are saying is find by make ignoring case. Find by make means based on the make column you will give the make. Honda is a make, BMW is a make. So we'll forward this value to it. It will automatically write this query for us. This data JPA library helps us to write this query automatically for us. We don't need to write any query. We don't need to maintain any logic to write these many lines of codes. Those are things which we are eliminating when we go for using this library called Spring Data JPA. And Spring Data JPA go much hand in hand with this Spring Boot. Spring Boot and Spring Data JPA goes hand in hand so that it's easy for us to quickly communicate with the DB and ensure you dynamically make your application responded. Now it's not dynamic response, right? If you look at the controller, what we are returning is just a static string, but we need to go to the DB and fetch the data and return. That's the idea of this uh, uh, usage of the web applications. So this is a basic information which I'm trying to feed in here. So this is the workflow which you need to understand, that it all goes from JDBC, Spring JDBC, and then goes to the JPA, which internally uses this JPA as in a design pattern, Java Persistence API with ORM, which is in Hibernate. Okay, I guess it's time for me to take some questions. Can we have the pro? Okay, that's done. So what is roadmap of Spring Boot? Oh, I'm only familiar with basics of Java. Okay, so Omkar says that what is the roadmap? Okay, roadmap. Roadmap will be like this. I'm not sure if I have that. Let me check. Just a second. Okay. So just a second. Let me, since you asked for the roadmap, I just wanted to give some more detailed informations on it. So I'll just look out from my mobile and I'll try to bring it up there. So meanwhile, if anyone have any questions, please do ask me. Uh, just a second. Okay. So this is a full stack actually. Okay. I hope you are able to see this, right? This is just something which I created long back, but probably it can be a roadmap, start to finish. So this is not limited. There can be a few more which you can look out for. But this is a end-to-end full stack course which I'm talking about. So it all starts with programming basics and sorry. So as I said, programming basics is, as you said you know Java, right? You know Java means you know JDBC also. So it all goes this in this way, as you can see: programming basics, Linux, Oracle, SQL Core, Java, JDBC, JUnit, servlets, Spring Core. This is what I was talking about. That is pre-Spring Boot era. Before Spring Boot, we used to work with the Spring Core. Spring Core is also there internally with the Spring Boot, but we people are now not getting learned to that. We straight away jump into Spring Boot. We skip all these. We skip all these essential things and straight away get into the Spring Boot. That's what we are doing right now. We just started up with some creation of Spring Boot application. This is just the first level start which you can do, and the flow goes like this: Spring JDBC, Spring AOP, Hibernate, Spring Boot, Spring Web MVC with Spring Boot, Spring REST with Spring Boot, Spring Data JPA with Spring Boot, Spring Security with Spring Boot. Then you go for microservice architectures. Then you go for Spring Cloud. Then you go for uh, the front end thing: HTML, Angular, JavaScript, TypeScript, Angular, MongoDB. A lot of stuffs are there in the full stack, but this is only, it's not limited only to this, but this is the essential thing that's required. Okay. So this one single document has multiple things. It's almost, I guess I have curated with some 100 slides. What this 100 slides says is it gives all the information about what you wanted to learn from Spring Core, what you have to learn from Core Java, what you have to learn from, see, Core Java itself. There are a lot of features which we need to learn on, right? The same way we have something like JDBC. Within JDBC, what you have to learn, what are the topics need to be discussed. Same way for JUnit, for servlets, Spring Core, Spring Boot, Spring AOP. So all these are sub topics what we need to cover in order to get ourselves uh, proficient in using these frameworks. So it goes. It's had a lot of slides, but I'm just wanted to give you this glimpse because since you asked for the roadmap, probably this you can follow. So right, so that's the essential thing that you have to learn from when it comes to the enterprise application development. Okay, we are trying to have the scope for developing an enterprise application. Spring Boots are used for developing an enterprise application. So we need to follow this standards. It will take some time. It's not overnight achievement. You cannot achieve in overnight. You need to consistently work hard in order to learn all these stuffs. It's not just about learning, as I'm saying, right? You need to keep your hands dirty by practicing more. Only then you will get the knowledge. So as you can see, I'm only trying to show the demos. I'm not trying to show any slides to explain the concepts. Yes, of course we need, but that's something which you can gain from multiple places. But the demonstrations and guidance and handling your doubts is something which is what we can do in the connect sessions. So don't only rely on the connect sessions. Connect sessions are only going to help you to resolve your queries, but you need to learn on everyday basis in order to gain all these insights. Okay. Um, Can you move the cursor to the right place? Can you share this PDF? Can you move? I'm not sure what that cursor is, but so it's numbering is given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 odd. So the order in which you can go for. Yeah, of course I can share the slide. So you just ping me on my LinkedIn. Just send a note on the DM. I'll share you this slides. Yes, of course we'll do that. What this flow denotes us. JDBC, Spring JDBC, Springboard is the flow in which it all started with. So as I said, right, JDBC is the initial Java applications which used to communicate with the database is with the help of JDBC. JDBC, if you write, you will write 100 lines of code. Let's say you're going to write, let's say 40 lines of code to get the data from the DB, 40 lines of code. In Spring JDBC, you will write 15 lines of code. In Spring Data JPA, you will write only 3 lines of code. That's what you're seeing here. See, just one liner of method, you'll able to get what you wanted from the backend DB. So in order to reduce the effort that need to be applied by the developer is getting reduced. So the base core is JDBC. Without JDBC, nothing happens in terms of communicating with the database from the Java perspective. Okay. So Spring Boot is a Java based application, right? So we need to use JDBC enabled framework, libraries like Spring Data JPA or Spring JDBC have to be used together. So that's what I'm trying to explain how we are landed today. It started from JDBC, but today we are working straight away from the data JPA to ease up our job to communicate with the DB. That is meaning. How much time should I have to spend each technology like Linux Basics, Oracle? Um, I don't prefer any time slot, but probably it's your own level of learning curve, right? You will have your own pace of learning. If you're confident enough on saying that, okay, I understood the basics of Linux by using all the Linux based commands, then you're good to go. You can move on. Java is a ocean. Okay. Even I cannot say, even I have 19 years of experience. I might not say that I know Java fully. Okay. So it's all in the level of experience that you have and the confidence that you can handle the development process matters. Rest you can learn on the go. You can gain. See, today we have Chat GPT, we have Google stuff, and like that we can learn things. Stack Overflows are there. Go there and you get the code. But where and how to implement that matters. What is what you can get it from internet, but how to apply is what you need to learn. So for that perspective, from that perspective, you try to focus on your learning curve and try to spend time on that. Yeah, of course, you should start creating your project as and when you are done with the modules. Let's say you are done with the core Java, JDBC, then you can start doing one small project, a standalone project to create a Java basic application to communicate with the DB. After you complete your Spring Boot, then you can start one web-based project, a web-based backend service, like how I'm creating a backend service right now, right? Similarly, you can start creating one project. So project is something which you can you can start as you complete every module. So you need not wait for that. Parallelly, you can start gaining more experience and exposures on how the projects are developed and so on. But there is no specific point. But once you get some basic essentials on every module, you start applying your project. You start doing your project work. Okay. No, see, okay. So coming to this PDF, yes, of course, we have the cloud-based thing, but specifically, no, this is just a title of this slide. So see, coming to the cloud, okay, AWS is widely used in my organization, in my project. I have connect with the AWS. We use only AWS cloud, but in your organization they might use Azure, or in someone's organization they might use Google Cloud Platform. But all are same cloud platforms to host your applications, to make use of their service and work on. But AWS is predominantly used. If you're going to work on Azure, then steps what we are going to follow in AWS is almost 60 to 70% the steps will be the same. But only thing is the services are all going to be different. The same way for the GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So whether you go for AWS or Azure, or see, we cannot. There are places where you need to learn all three platforms, but that needs a lot of time and effort. Okay, so you can decide on which one to be chosen for, whether you want to use AWS or you want to use Azure. That depends on your requirement, your organization's requirement, or your own personal choice. You can go for choosing either AWS or Azure or GCP. Is that clear? Yeah, of course, I'll be sharing this. So if you are on LinkedIn, you can just send a DM to me, direct message, and so I'll be able to share the PDF there. Yes. Okay, so I guess we are running out of time. So I thought of taking to the DB level connectivity, but unfortunately, we need some basic stuff to be learned. So that's why I just wanted to spend some more time on that. Probably in the next connect, we'll have a little bit of more different order of learning. So if you prefer to come, but keep in mind that live sessions will not be recorded. Live sessions are live sessions. Okay, so you can ask me, so I mean, or you wanted to recall those learnings, so will that be a choice? No. The thing is, even if you want to recall, you have the platforms. You go to internet, you get it, whatever you are consuming here. So you practice it, you come up with doubts, and you want to be addressed with doubts, then I'm there to address. That's the purpose. So live sessions or live sessions will not be recorded. It's not that, yes, in other way, I'm forcing you to come to my session. It's because only then you can feel the life presence. So I'm pausing, you are asking some doubts, and I'm rectifying your doubts. This you will not get it in recorded. You just observe that recorded session. Probably these questions you will be able to hear, but you will not be able to ask questions. Okay, so that's the reason. See, choosing this is up to you. You look at from your organization, you connect with your organization's colleagues, ask them what cloud platforms are they using predominantly, majorly which platform does your X organization is using, and based on that you go ahead and start your learning. But if you personally want to learn AWS, you go ahead and learn AWS. That's ideally, it's your choice. That's what I'm saying. AWS is mostly used, widely used cloud platforms in most of the project. Next to AWS is Azure, and next to Azure is GCP. That's the order. The very first cloud platform that got into the world is AWS, Amazon Web Service. Later, Azure and GCP all got into the competition, but many companies are using Azure. You can connect with your colleagues and get the understanding. To start with, of course, you can also go with AWS also. But if organization is using Azure only and your project is going to be more scoped towards Azure, then better go for Azure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason I just gave that session. Yeah. I'm sorry, I gave this clarity. So you can decide if GCP is used. Of course, you need to spend initial time with the GCP only. Okay. Probably parallelly, you can go for learning of AWS also. Yeah. Okay. So we'll summarize here. I guess we are running out of time. So probably in the next Connect session, we'll have more learnings towards this. In all Connects, I might not be coming up with Spring Boot. Probably suddenly I'll be coming with cloud-based Connect sessions like AWS. I might give you some knowledge on AWS. Okay, so it's a mix and match, but mostly the sessions will be relevant to the Spring Boot application development only. So stay tuned on my regular LinkedIn post and keep watching that space so that you will be get to notified about what kind of sessions that's going to be lined up in the upcoming Connect sessions. So if you have any final questions, please let me know. We'll address that. If not, if you're all good, then probably we can close the session for the day. Anyone else have any other questions? So come up with questions. That's what I'm saying. Be ready to ask questions. I can understand that you might not be knowing few things, and so you might be feeling like, will that be a right question to ask in the forum? Don't hesitate your questions. Asking more questions will lead to expanding your knowledge. If you don't ask questions, I might not be able to answer all your questions also. Okay, some questions where I might not able to even answer it, I might not know, or I need to go and research and then get the answer. But ask questions, let it be more interactive. You unmute, you want to speak with me, speak with me. The medium of communication is going to be English. Never mind, I don't mind even if you have less communication skills. It's okay. To a certain extent, you try to convey and I'll try to understand. But collaboration is something very essential. So try to be more interactive, collaborative, and try to utilize these kind of connect sessions. See, I'm spending 2 hours of time. Okay. It's okay. We had some 12, 13 people joined. That's okay. It doesn't matter how many people, even if two people join, I'll be able to deliver the entire 2 hours of session. It's not that I'm going to deliver only for 1 hour for the two people. But the idea or the thing is, I wanted my knowledge to be shared. It's not paid service, it's free service. Always it's going to be free. But only I can do it on my free time. That's the only thing. I can only commit that because I'm a full-time employee, right? So my full focus is on my current project where I lead 25 people. Okay. 25 people are reporting to me. So means it's like I'm more involved on the everyday work. So the only thing is just connect with these kind of different connect sessions who are arranging it for free. Join them and learn and expand your knowledge and try to gain that knowledge and try to share that knowledge to someone else. Okay. So one request that I would ask is like, if you see some people you want to convey this person from LinkedIn, he is giving some connect sessions, you please join. Just share this. That's the only thing which I can request. Okay. So that more people can learn from others. So I join many connect sessions, many uh, people's virtual sessions. I do on my free time. So like which you try to share these informations to many people so that let them know these things are happening. We'll collaborate. It's all a professional connect. So LinkedIn is a space for professional thing. I don't post anything other than that on my LinkedIn. Okay, there are multiple stuffs are there, but I refrain from posting all unwanted things. What is needed, what people needs from the knowledge perspective is what I'm sharing. So try to utilize those things, learn those stuffs every day. I'm giving some gist of informations, try to understand more visual things I'm sharing. Try to utilize that, learn it, and enrich your knowledge and ensure your career grows. Okay. So possibly if you feel like, to your known people, your friends, your colleagues, okay, who are also in the learning curve, please go ahead and share with them that these things are happening so that they can also join. Okay. So thank you so much for your time. 2 hours you have spent. I guess this might have been an informative session. That's what I always keep ensuring that because I don't want to waste your time. Okay. Saturdays, 2 hours. It's Saturday, right? Saturday is like you need to spend time with your family members and your mom, your dad, whomever, like your sisters, your brothers and stuff like that. But I'm trying to pull your time. I don't want to waste you people's time. So I try to keep engaging. I try to keep more informative. Let's collaborate. Let's talk. Let's have one connect session just for talking. Okay, just for talking. Let's exchange some informations. Let's talk. Let's have some more understanding and stuff like that. We'll grow. We'll grow if we connect more. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gayatri. Thank you so much, Pooja. And have a great weekend and keep following me on our rest of the post, which is going to be upcoming on the next week. So next week I have some personal functions and commitments. So I'm not sure how far that I'll engage with Saturday, but 95% I'll try to do it, but 5% I cannot commit. But let's see. I'll try to keep things intact, and we'll try to connect next week also at my best. Okay. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend and have a great day. We'll connect up with another interesting session. Thank you, guys.